Dearly redheaded, we are choosing consciousness today to get through this thing called grief. Interesting word, grief. It means love, which makes for a mighty good joke, but I'm here to tell you, there's nothing else. Just joy. And if the big picture tends to bring you down, go crazy once your life goes. Woo!
This is part 2 with Jersey. And we, for clarity purposes, we just made sure we wanted to share that divorce was finalized. They were going week to week when custody was violated. So now your son's been kept from you for many months, and the court events start. And I'm going to just do what we did in the first, where I'm going to lead you, because I'm, fuck, Jersey. She said it's okay if I slip. You have some ADHD, as do I, so we're trying to uncover this together as chronologically as possible.
Without losing our minds.
Yeah. Yeah, so at this point, I'm going to do the best I can with the names. So you find out, and this is when I'm really involved, and this is when I remember just how sad you were, and how afraid you were. And I can remember saying your ex was a coward, but I recognize the power of his father was in there too.
Right.
And you developed tremors. I'm just going to say it.
Yes.
And it was brutal to watch. And you hire an attorney. You go to court, and his side orders psych evals.
Yes.
Okay, so the results of the psych eval come through, and the woman who did the psych evals met with both your son and your ex.
Yes, she was court appointed. We did not choose her. She was appointed by the court.
Okay, and she
Yep.
does her due diligence on the front end and then evaluates the psych eval.
Yes, she does her own evaluation, met with me, met with my ex, met with our son, met with us together, me and my son, my ex and my son. She does her own thing. Then she gets the results from the actual testing that we went and had done.
Okay, fair to mention at this time, too, he has, is he remarried at this point?
No, but he is in a live-in relationship.
That he subsequently married that person.
Correct.
All right, so I'm just adding that as an extra layer of folks that were busting your balls and involved in your son's life. Okay.
Yeah, and she came into the picture just a few months before my ex keeping my son from me. Just a little sidebar there.
Okay. So she was a united front with him.
Correct.
All right. So now, and I'm back to the court-appointed evaluator was a psychologist. Is a psychologist.
Correct.
All right. This is her testimony. Now I have all the testimony. Jersey has provided me with all the testimony, and it reads like a movie script. I mean, I just can't believe what is said in this. And this is her.
Under oath.
Yes, this is her asking, the judge asking her to extrapolate the evaluations. And she says, in his particular profile, which is very important information and unusual, he has showed that he had highly invalid responses. a high degree of denial, an overstatement of his virtues, but concurrently, he spiked in the clinical as significantly clinical on two measures that have to do with one's ability to manage their anger and their resentment through tendency to be very suspicious and their tendency to be anxious. And it was, I'm condensing this, significant elevation, and in those cases, what that suggests, what they have found from the studies, is that these individuals are typically very disturbed, but they lack complete insight into their disturbance because they rely on rationalization and denial and projection. Projection is where you make the assumption the other person is at fault for whatever's happening to me. So either they caused it and I'm justified, or they just caused it.
Special.
I'm just seeing, I'm just going to read more, but I want to just see how to connect the dots here. I think this is important for our readers to hear. Again, apply it if it resonates. I always conduct my evaluation first, meaning she looked at the testing second, and then I look at the instrument at the end, and it absolutely validated what I was seeing throughout, which was that this man appeared, from what I could determine during the mental status exam, there's errors in this, to have disturbance in his thinking, meaning that he was unable to respond to information and provide fact-based answers. He tended to confuse his beliefs with facts. He was so preoccupied with his animosity towards her that he really couldn't give me a chronology. And I 3 different occasions attempted to try to obtain a history of the child's behavioral issues, and it was very, very difficult. So overall, I saw from this, as well as from some of his ongoing, in my opinion, based on my exam of this man, ongoing belief that this woman is truly dangerous, she's abusive, she's unloving. I think he truly believes that, and he could not examine it, even though I asked him more than once, could you give me some evidence to support this? And he couldn't. And sometimes he would get annoyed with me. And then in addition, he was using that belief to make judgment about his son. So the judgment was therefore quite faulty. All right, so there's your ex's situation. And now what I want to talk about is what happened to your son and what the court said and what you noticed. And I can read it, or we can spitball it, or we can do both. But what you were experiencing was your son sort of splitting.
Yes.
And so he was, once he came back to you, we'll go back to this document because this document...
It's fascinating.
Yes, the document is fascinating. But when so he would, and what the psychologist observed is that he had learned to throw you under the bus. And in this document, she said how unusual that is, because usually kids who have been abused show care for the abuser, or the desire to be in the abuser's life, because they're usually not fully cognizant of their abuse, and they show dissonance. But in your case, your son had been so, I mean, brainwashed, right? That
Right. They had, right. I was told by another psychologist that even children that are abused by, say, like an addicted parent, or, abused, they still want to be with that parent. Like they still,
want
like
the
that's still their
approval and
parent.
love, right?
Yes, yes. So this was all new information to my brain at the time. This was all, I was like learning as I was experiencing everything.
Right.
You know, it was, you know, and the more things came to light, the more I was like, oh, okay, now I see that. Now I see that. Now I see that. But yeah, my son was basically brainwashed. Um, Yet when we would be together, you know, it would be a little tough in the beginning, and then we would be us, you know, and
Which I
then he would have to,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
and then he would have to go back, and the whole cycle would just continue.
Which I'm just going to say is still the case today, and you've
Yes,
been,
absolutely.
and we're going to get there in conversation number 3.
Yep.
So because I'm so anxious to talk about covert abuse, so your son was not, as far as you know, physically abused. He was not sexually abused. Most of this were covert efforts and long-term covert efforts. This took years.
Yes. From, I would say, you know, 4 or 5 years old, it started.
Yes. And again, I often, I don't often, but I try to say, and you and I have talked about narcissism, and we all have the potential to be narcissistic. It's an examination of self. It's really not as much nurture or nature. It's a lot of things. But this is when, we're beyond narcissism at this point. This is a person who has a full-on disorder. And this is where the court asks about him. Did he present with a personality disorder? And the psychologist's response, oh, yes. And the court says, could you describe what that is, please? And she says, I would probably put it in the category of paranoid personality disorder. And there you have it.
And there you have it.
So between, I'm not going to read any more, but between all of this, I mean, to hear his attorney read his attorney berating the psychologist for the very test that they ordered. And
Yes.
then to have your attorney stand up and try to have and again, this is a small community. These are
Right.
judges and attorneys that know one another. There's power plays, there's relationships, there's elections. This is everyday stuff. This is everyday stuff.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Stuff.
Thank you. Every day,
Yes.
everywhere stuff. Everyday brutality, as I sometimes say.
Yes.
So even when all of this evidence was put before the judge, the defense attorney made sure to hang it on the judge that, hey, regardless of all this evidence, it's still on you to decide, which I think you said the court embraced. Like, thanks for, pointing out, still my decision. And the judge decided ultimately to not go to trial, correct?
Correct.
And you walked out of there with not joint custody, but visitation?
I had joint legal. He had physical. I had joint legal, which was a joke dealing with him. Yeah, and I had to pay child support. I got 3 weekends a month.
All right, you just got Brian by the short hairs. And I believe the psychologist had said your son would be better off in foster care than with his father.
Yes, that was said. That she said if anything would happen to the mother, and that the child would be better off in a foster situation than with the father.
Yep. Okay. Let me just check. All right. I want to move on to your son, who, as I say, has given you his blessing for us to be talking. I have to do a time check. All right. So, but, but, all right. Do I have 10 minutes? All right. So, as an extension of what we just talked about, I love to bring things full circle. You know, I do as your friend.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I then, and you know, I'm fixated. I'm not going to say obsessed. I'm fixated on dissociation because I find most people are dissociated, and I found this woman that writes about structural dissociation and the value of noticing parts. And this speaks to the cycle of abuse. This woman's name is Rebecca Mandeville. She's a therapist. I believe she's a psychologist. I don't remember. But this kind of speaks to what happened to your son. When a parent acts in a scary, harmful, non-nurturing, and unjust way, again, mother or father or siblings, which was what happened to me, whoever the caregiver is, the child will find themselves in the position of fearing the caregiving figure that they need to safely attach to in order to survive. This sets the stage for disorganized attachment trauma to develop. Researchers have found that dissociative symptoms are associated with disorganized attachment. Children in a relationship with unstable, unpredictable, or even traumatizing parental caregivers or any caregivers will have difficulty holding a consistent view of the parent and of themselves. To survive,
Bingo.
yeah. I did this. I did this for you. I did this for the audience. I have my own way of crystallizing things, but I always try to provide a doctor who's on the forefront of knowing about this stuff, because you started, and it's a segue, but you started going down your I don't mean a rabbit hole in an insulting way, but you knew it was parent alienation. You knew how these people manipulate the courts. The irony about the courts, just like in real life, is, you know, overt abuse turns to covert. So it's even harder place to negotiate what's going on between two parties. Back to what Mandeville said. To survive physically and psycho-emotionally, the dependent child must somehow attach to their unsteady, unstable, and at times unsafe caregiver. Negative feelings that cannot be safely expressed toward the non-nurturing, scary parent will instead be turned unconsciously inward toward the child's own developing self, as this is psychologically a safer thing to do given the dependent position the child is in. This is how the false or survival self with attendant self-alienation, fragmentation, and split-off parts first begins. So that not only describes your ex, but it describes your son and his grandfather. We got three generations of males that I just want people to understand how this repeats.
Yes.
And then, and this part isn't as... well, yeah, it is. It's all really important. This is where in women, this stuff becomes more like borderline and bipolar, and in men, more often becomes narcissism or sociopathy. I mean, there's a lot of crossovers between the two. It's interesting that women have to be crazy and men get to be angry. But angry is just really, really at the basis of how it manifests in men or women. There are structural dissociation traits, and this I will provide this information to you, but a lot of these remind me of your son, myself, and most people. There's really nothing in here that makes me say that we're not just a dissociated culture. And I think very often it's dissociation, not depression. and it's grief. And I'm going to spare those. Another name that came up was Janina Fisher. She theorizes that trauma results in the personality splitting off into a going on with normal life part, while non-integrated trauma-based survival parts of the personality form as coping mechanisms in response to overwhelmingly stressful or harmful environment or relationship experiences. So good shit. Good shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, where you're concerned, and tell me to go fuck myself, but I hope that, and you've complimented me and thanked me tremendously for the support I was able to give to you during this time, but I want the listeners to know you really returned the favor. When I had my dissociative episode in the summer of 24, and I had a CPTSD rage event, a lot. And I don't always like to talk about it here. I'd rather write about it and have you read about it. But then you stepped up and for the last year plus have just allowed me to process a lot of the stuff of my own dissociation. And it was largely based from firsthand experience.
Yes.
More so through your son, but then that teaches us.
Yes.
All right. So the place I want to go next is talking about him, meaning your son, and being very respectful that you two could have been estranged and are not, which I think is beautiful. But you and I have also often commented that, and I'm hedging a little, I always do, that his overt abuse was actually covert, but became obvious to him. And I think that's an important distinction because it was so overtly covert
Yes.
that things started to go ring-a-ding. Fair?
Yes.
And you and I have discussed, wow, when kids have evidence, ironically, the evidence doesn't make it any easier for them to not split. And then the empathy becomes for the kids who never recognize, because the abuse is so covertly insidious.
Yes.
Okay, so now we'll stop here because I want to talk about him, and I have a feeling we're going to have a lot to say, and I'm picturing him in my mind, and I want him to know we love him, and this is going to help a lot of kids.
Thank you for listening and supporting Natural Born Redhead. If you follow the bouncing balls, please like and subscribe. If you know someone interested in sparing others grief and inciting joy, message me on Facebook or reach out via my website, Natural Born Redhead. J-Ma.